With the new flute complete and danger drawing near, there's no turning back now. Matthus is ready to strike and Johan and Peewit must act before the music turns to madness. This is Chapter 7. In a dimly lit stone room, a concerned advisor warns Van Elgenheim about the dangers of his actions, suggesting the serfs might complain to the king. He fears the king will retaliate by sending an expedition to relieve Van Elgenheim of his fief. Van Elgenheim dismisses the warning, angrily waving his hand and declaring that he needs money more than he fears the king's intervention. His frustration is evident as he insists the king should mind his own business. Van Elgenheim is startled when suddenly a bag spilling gold coins drop next to him, and someone nearby exclaims that's the money. Looking up, Van Elgenheim sees Matthus at the door. Van Elgenheim, now more composed, instructs his advisor to leave them alone. Van Elgenheim confronts Matthus aggressively, accusing him of being a scoundrel and threatening to ban him from returning. Matthus counters Van Elgenheim's threat, hinting at a scandal involving stolen loot and accusing Van Elgenheim of being complicit. Van Elgenheim reacts with anger, telling him to be quiet. Sitting down, Van Elgenheim listens as Matthus proposes a plan, pointing out Van Elgenheim's financial troubles and suggesting he could build an army to expand his territory. Matthus seems confident, hoping to sway Van Elgenheim with the promise of power. Matthus confidently declares that he has plenty of gold coins and suggests providing the funds needed to raise the army. Matthus eagerly proposes that they invade the country and share the conquered territories, to which Van Elgenheim heartily agrees. Matthus, with a confident grin, gestures towards the path leading into the forest while both men internally plot to deceive the other. Each harbors the thought that they will not actually share the money, despite outwardly agreeing to the plan. Meanwhile, Johan and Peewit are at Homnibus's place, asking if Homnibus has awakened. Homnibus assistant Oliver answers yes, but Homnibus has a fever from overworking. Oliver explains that he gave a good sleeping potion, assuring Johan and Peewit Homnibus will be better tomorrow morning. Johan and Peewit, however, seems frustrated and exclaims that it's the last straw. Back in the forest, Van Elgenheim and Matthus gleefully admire a wagon filled with gold, silver, and jewels, boasting that it's enough to start a war. Their laughter echoes as they delight in their amassed wealth. Matthus, holding a bag of gold, discusses their current military strength, Van Elgenheim admitting to having only 500 soldiers but assuring that money can raise an army of 3,000. Matthus expresses concern that 3,000 men are too few, insisting they need at least 10,000. He proposes to leave some money with Van Elgenheim to equip the soldiers while planning to use the rest for further recruitment. With determination, Matthus declares his intention to go abroad to recruit mercenaries, asking Van Elgenheim for his thoughts on the plan. In a leafy setting, Matthus and Van Elgenheim discuss the departure, with Matthus eager to leave tonight from Gravelines. Hidden among the foliage, two Smurfs listen in curiously, observing the conversation with interest. Inside a cozy room, Johan and Peewit sit at a wooden table, reflecting on their recent encounter. Johan seems frustrated, commenting on the quick one's skill, while Peewit nods in agreement, pondering the situation. Suddenly, a cry for help interrupts their thoughts, calling for Johan and Peewit to come quickly. Both look up in surprise. A frantic Oliver points outside, exclaiming about the strange things happening, as Johan and Peewit rush out the door, eager to investigate. As they step outside, Johan and Peewit are surprised to find an entire gathering of Smurfs, who are bustling about with energy. The Smurfs cheerfully discuss their plans and adventures, creating a lively and Smurfy atmosphere around them. Johan questions how they know where to find them, while Peewit eagerly greets a group of Smurfs with a friendly gesture. Papa Smurfs, seemingly excited, chatter about their journey through Homnibus and the land they came from. Papa Smurf expresses his concern about Johan and Peewit's absence and wonders why Homnibus didn't send them back to retrieve the flute. Johan says that Homnibus couldn't put them to sleep anymore. He inquires if the flute still works. Suddenly a melody of flute plays. Johan is suddenly flipped into the air with a surprise. Papa Smurf watches amusedly, confirming the flute's magic is still very much alive. Peewit claps his hands with delight as Johan lands on the ground, dazed but unharmed, while Papa Smurfs chuckle at the magical spectacle. Peewit exclaims his satisfaction with the results, clearly pleased with the flute's power. Johan, recovering quickly, stands up and expresses his readiness to pursue Matthus Peppersack, asking Papa Smurf if he knows his whereabouts. A wise Smurf informs them that Peppersack was last seen heading to Castle Elgenheim, where another Smurf awaits to guide them. With a confident point, the Smurf wishes them luck on their adventurous quest. Johan urges Peewit to hurry, but Peewit halts, sensing something amiss. His instincts tell him that their mission might not be as straightforward as it seems. Peewit expresses concern about the Smurf's cryptic language, fearing it might not be helpful. Papa Smurf acknowledges the problem and decides to accompany Johan and Peewit to ensure they understand the guidance from Smurfs. Johan runs ahead into a building, encouraging Peewit and the Smurfs to go ahead as Peewit urges the Smurfs to keep up. Johan and Peewit ride on through the countryside, with Papa Smurf expressing amazement at riding a horse for the first time despite his age. After traversing through various landscapes, Johan and Peewit finally catch sight of the majestic castle Elgenheim in the distance. As they approach the forest, Johan and Peewit spot a Smurf calling out to them from a tree branch. The Smurf, perched on the branch, urgently informs them of Matthus Peppersack's whereabouts, mentioning he has headed to Gravelingen. Concerned, the Smurf emphasizes the need for haste to prevent Peppersack's plans. Johan on horseback expresses confusion but realizes that Papa Smurf's interpret, Matthus is planning to set sail from Gravelingen. Johan, determined to stop Matthus, urges Peewit to catch up quickly as they race through a forest path. Peewit, on his goat, follows closely behind. The duo continues their urgent pursuit, they cutting through the sunlit landscape. The dust trails behind them as they press on towards Gravelingen. Meanwhile, in Gravelingen, the bustling harbor town is alive with activity as ships are prepared for departure. As the last crate is loaded onto the ship, Matthus Peppersack beams with satisfaction, ready to embark on their voyage. Meanwhile, Johan and Peewit race through the countryside on horseback, urging their steeds to go faster. Determined to reach the harbor before the ship departs, Johan shouts encouragements to Peewit. Back at the ship, Matthus Peppersack gives the command to hoist the sails and cast off the ropes. The ship begins to make its move, as Johan and Peewit close the distance in their frantic chase. Johan and Peewit ride into a bustling village, announcing their arrival with urgency as curious villagers look on. Spotting Matthus's cart abandoned by the shore, Johan and Peewit realize he must be nearby. They decide to question a nearby fisherman, hoping he might have seen where Matthus went. Johan and Peewit approach the fisherman, asking if he's seen a short, chubby man with a beard. The fisherman seems to recognize the description and begins to offer information, pointing them in the right direction. The fisherman points towards a ship, confirming that the man they are looking for, Matthus Peppersack, boarded it. Johan, Peewit, and the fisherman watch as the ship sails away, disappearing into the horizon. They stand on the rocky shore, contemplating their next move to pursue Matthus. Johan urgently asks a nearby fisherman if there's a ship fast enough to catch one in the distance, but the man discourages him, saying only boats are available and it's pointless to try. Johan questions the man if he knows the destination of the ship, but the man admits he doesn't. Peewit chimes in, teasing the man for not being more curious about the ship's journey. Determined, Johan instructs Peewit to find out where the boat is heading, emphasizing its importance to locate Matthus. Peewit responds energetically, ready to begin his investigation. As darkness falls, Peewit stands in the street with a disappointed posture, telling Johan he found nothing during his search. Johan asks if Peewit had any luck, but Peewit replies negatively, eager to hear if Johan fared better. Sitting dejectedly by the water, Johan confides in Peewit that he's losing hope, believing everything is lost this time. Peewit listens, sharing in Johan's despair as they ponder their next move. Suddenly, a cheerful Papa Smurf appears, exclaiming a hearty greeting, which surprises Johan and Peewit. Johan, startled, questions Papa Smurf's whereabouts, eager for any news that might change their fortunes. Papa Smurf explains his unsuccessful search for the Smurf who might know about the ship, leaving Johan and Peewit disappointed. Despite the lack of information, the Smurf's presence brings a hint of hope. Papa Smurf reveals alarming news about Matthus's alliance with the Lord of Elgenheim, planning an invasion with mercenaries. Johan, thinking quickly, realizes that knowing Elgenheim's plans means they can track Matthus. Peewit energetically decides to play his flute to force Van Elgenheim to speak, eager to take action. His enthusiasm is slightly interrupted by Johan's cautious, "Hey, wait." Johan, contemplating the situation, voices his concerns that Van Elgenheim might mislead them or feign ignorance. He emphasizes the slim chances of getting the truth. Peewit questions their course of action, while Johan confidently states he has an idea and urges them to listen closely. Meanwhile, at Castle Elgenheim, Van Elgenheim is gleefully counting his coins. His sly smile suggests he feels triumphant and secure with his newfound wealth. Suddenly, Van Elgenheim hears a knocking sound that interrupts his contentment, causing him to look around suspiciously. He clutches his coins tightly, questioning who might be there, his expression turning anxious. A servant informs Van Elgenheim that a boy has brought an urgent parchment, and Van Elgenheim, still wary, demands to know the significance. Van Elgenheim walks away from the door, examining the parchment with a furrowed brow. He wonders aloud what new demands might be made of him now. Reading a letter with growing alarm, Van Elgenheim discovers that their secret plan has been exposed and he urgently needs to reach Gravelingen. He knows time is of the essence, as the letter mentions a departing ship and a waiting fisherman. Van Elgenheim rushes out, shouting for his boots and travel clothes, and demands his horse be saddled immediately. A little while later, Van Elgenheim is spotted riding towards the docks where a fisherman awaits his arrival. The fisherman exclaims upon seeing him. Van Elgenheim declares his authority as the Lord of Elgenheim and inquires if the fisherman's boat is prepared to depart. The fisherman eagerly confirms, expressing his readiness to set sail immediately. As the boat sets sail, it navigates past a rocky shoreline with a burning beacon atop a tower in the background. The sea is choppy, indicating a swift and determined departure. On board the boat, fisherman confidently steers as Peewit and Johan stand by, listening to Van Elgenheim announce their course heading west. 3 days into their journey at sea, Peewit is struggling with seasickness, leaning over the side of the ship and groaning about how ill he feels. Peewit, clutching his stomach, pleads with Johan to stop the ship from rocking as Johan sits calmly beside him, responding with a casual assurance that he will try. Peewit looks at Johan incredulously, questioning his earlier promise, while Johan clarifies with a grin that he can't actually stop the ship from moving. Johan walks over to a crew member and asks if everything is okay, while the crew member assures him it is, except for Elgenheim, who seems troubled. The crew member explains that Elgenheim has been fretting for 3 days over some news, hinting at Johan's involvement, but Johan quickly hushes him to keep it secret. Elgenheim stands at the helm, deep in thought, wondering why things have gone awry and feeling frustrated with the slow progress of the ship. Elgenheim suddenly spots land on the horizon, exclaiming in relief and excitement as he sees their destination finally come into view. The ship approaches a bustling port town with a tall stone tower, seagulls flying overhead as they come closer to the docks. Elgenheim instructs his crew to wait on the ship as they dock, pointing towards the town with determination. And with that, another chapter comes to a close, but the adventure isn't over just yet. New twists, new magic, and new moments are just ahead. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. A new chapter is released every day. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.